Judge. The state calls Agent Elizabeth Bigham, who has already taken the stand. Ms. Bigham, will you raise your right hand and take an oath? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give to the court today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
If you would, please state and spell your name for the record.
My name is Elizabeth Bigham, Elizabeth Bigham.
Where are you currently employed, ma'am?
I'm employed as a special agent with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and I'm currently assigned to our Office of Special Investigations Cold Case Unit.
Prior to that assignment, where did you work in the GBI?
So prior to this, I spent about 10 and a half years, or maybe just under 10 and a half years, at our Child Exploitation and Computer Crimes Unit, where I worked cases involving the online exploitation of children, child sex trafficking, and child pornography cases. And then prior to that, I was assigned to our Athens field office for about 6.5 years. And I worked general investigations to include anything from homicides to aggravated assaults, thefts, child molestations, etc.
Before you worked for the GBI, did you have any other kind of law enforcement experience?
No, I did not.
Okay. And when you become a GBI agent, what is the training process to become an agent?
So it's changed over the years, but back when I went through the academy in 2007, it was a 14-week basic GBI academy where we did everything from learning law to learning how to write search warrants, emergency vehicle operations, shooting, etc. And then after that, we did a 2-week undercover narcotics school, and then we were sent to our respective field office, and we were involved in a field training program. I don't remember how long it was. It varies because there's basically a field training book, and you have to check off certain things. There's so many interviews you have to do. You have to fingerprint someone. You have to do all these different things. So it can vary in how long it takes. But I would say on average about 6 months or so. And then you're kind of on your own with the help of older agents or more seasoned agents.
As it relates specifically to the Office of Special Investigations, as well as your unit, the Cold Case Unit, when is it and how is it that that unit came into existence?
So our unit was established as part of the Coleman-Baker Act. Our unit was established in July of 2023, and there are 10 special agents that are assigned to that office, and we essentially work cold cases. That's our primary responsibility. And the Coleman-Baker Act was enacted, I don't recall the specific date that it was enacted prior to that, but essentially there's some criteria that you have to meet in order to file a Coleman-Baker application. And those are that the case had to have been a homicide.
Mr. Yeoman, would you care to respond to the objection?
Your Honor, it goes back to this witness's training and experience.
Yes, sir.
Baker Coleman Act has nothing to do with their training experience.
Okay, I'm going to overrule the objection. You may continue.
And Agent Bigham, I think you had just started in on talking about some of the statutory criteria for making a request.
Yes. So the case had to have been a homicide, had to have occurred after 1970. It has to be at least 3 years old, for lack of a better word, or cold if you want to call it that. There are some criteria that indicates that it has to be, or it has to have been investigated by a GBI office if you're requesting the GBI, but also you can request the police department or sheriff's office. That was the initial investigating agency under the same thing. And that the leads and all of the kind of probative leads have been exhausted, and there are really no suspects at that point. And that's kind of the criteria that you have to meet. I believe you have to be a family member as well of the deceased.
When is it that you joined the unit?
I joined October of 23.
And did you, at any point after you joined the unit, were you assigned to review the case of the murder of Tara Baker?
I was.
Okay. Do you recall approximately when it was when you were assigned that case for investigation as part of the cold case unit?
If I'm not mistaken, it was the first case I was assigned.
All right.
When I got there.
And was there any other agent who is assigned to that case as well with you?
Yes, Special Agent Jeremy Howell.
Once you received that assignment, and kind of more generally, once you receive a cold case assignment, what are the initial steps that you take and took in this case?
So I don't know that there's a specific way you have to work a cold case every single time. I think it's kind of our preference as well, our agent preference, how you're going to start and what you're going to do. But logically, you'd get the case file and start reviewing the case file. In this particular investigation, it was a bit unique in the sense that Athens-Clarke County Police Department had an extremely large case file, and GBI also had an extremely large case file. So it took a minute to collect all the files, get all the Athens stuff, get all the GBI stuff together, and kind of mesh it all together to figure out where we were at and where we needed to start.
And you mentioned an extremely large case file for ACCPD and an extremely large case file for the GBI. How did the volume of this case file compare to other cases you had worked as either an agent dealing with the sexual exploitation crimes that you made reference to, or prior to that when you were an agent working homicides, aggravated assaults, et cetera?
Mr. Young, would you like to respond to the objection of relevance?
I think it goes directly to the amount of information that Agent Bigham had to review and digest as part of her work on this investigation.
I'm going to overrule the objection. You may continue.
So our GBI case files, before we went electronic years ago when we used to print everything, they're generally about an inch thick, and if I'm not mistaken, there's 25 or 27 of those at the GBI office in Athens. So there's about 27 volumes. We called them a volume, and they were generally about an inch thick. And then the Athens file, if I'm not mistaken, was about 15 4 or 5 inch thick binders of just paper and printouts and things of that nature. And then there were also multiple boxes containing various pieces of the case file, and we kind of had to get it organized a little bit.
And that's just the paper associated with the case, is that correct?
Yes, I would say it was about 20,000 pages or so.
Is it important to review the physical evidence in the case as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, and so is that something that you did as part of reviewing the case file in this case?
Yes, Agent Howell and I, in December of 23, spent a few days over at the Athens-Clarke County Police Department going through every single piece of evidence that they made available to us, which was, my understanding, was everything but one piece, which stayed in the evidence room but was accounted for. And we inventoried it, created a spreadsheet to help us follow it, because the Athens evidence had been through, I believe, 3 iterations of an evidence program. So we wanted to ensure that, you know, the barcode it was given when it was first taken in 2001 matched up to what barcode it had now, and it all kind of stayed consistent. We wanted to see if we had any missing evidence. We wanted to see if there was anything that was unaccounted for. So we spent days just going through every piece one by one, documenting it and ensuring that it was present and where it had been and things like that.
That talks about physical evidence in general. I want to talk to you a little bit now about a subset of physical evidence that I'm going to refer to as biological evidence, okay? As a cold case unit investigator, what importance does biological evidence have to you and to your job in investigating cold cases?
So I think that's kind of what we were focusing on initially, because those are the things that we can send back to the crime lab and hope that there's potentially updated testing or new testing. And at that point, it would have been, 23 years or so, that we can maybe get something from. So we obviously noted things that could potentially be retested or tested with new technology that was available.
So you used the phrase 23 years or so, and I mean, I just want to make sure that we're clear about what are you referring to? 23 years from what?
2001.
Okay.
January 19th of 2001.
All right. And so is that a process you went through in evaluating the physical, biological evidence in this case?
Yes, Agent Howell and I documented everything, and eventually we had a meeting with our crime laboratory about that.
Okay. And I don't want you to get into anything anybody said during that meeting, but based on that meeting, did you make a determination about resubmitting certain items of physical evidence?
We did.
Okay. And let me ask this also. Are these things happening one after another sequentially or all at the same time?
It's kind of all at the same time. Well, we're, in December, we're inventorying evidence, and then we're still reviewing the file. And then in, February, we have a meeting with the crime lab. We're still reviewing the file. We're just kind of doing different investigative acts, but all sort of at the same time. And once we do one thing and it's kind of holding for a minute, we move on to some other things.
And as it relates to, besides review, particular steps that you take, as part of your review, do you kind of create an idea of who the witnesses were at the time of the actual crime?
Yes. As we were reviewing the file, we would make notes about maybe potential people we wanted to re-interview just after sort of an initial review of everything or reading it through the first time, and start just kind of keeping notes on what we wanted to do separately from the evidence.
And so as part of y'all's investigative actions in this case, were certain witnesses re-interviewed?
Yes.
Okay. Did you yourself conduct all of those interviews?
No.
Okay. Besides you and Agent Howell, was there anyone else from the GBI who was kind of helping with some of those interviews as well?
Yes. Many of the other agents from our office, and then also some agents from field offices around the state. So, for instance, if we had an interview in South Georgia that was 4 hours away, I would ask an agent to handle that for me.
At any point, did the resubmission of some of that biological physical evidence from January 19th of 2001 yield any new information?
It did.
Okay. And what information is it that you received?
So on April 30th of 2024, we received, and by we I mean Agent Howell and I, received a crime lab report in reference to some DNA evidence. Okay.
Okay. So I'm sorry.
All right.
That's all right. And you did the right thing. And so I just want to take you back to the question there for a second. And it was, what information did y'all receive?
Okay. So as part of that crime lab report, we learned that there was a match to DNA in the sexual assault kit that was taken from Tara Baker at the time of her autopsy.
Okay. And when you say a match, what, was there a particular individual or individuals to whom that match came back?
Yes. It came back to Edrick Faust as part of the oral swabs that were tested out of her sexual assault kit.
Okay. And when you're saying oral swabs, you're talking about swabs labeled as oral swabs.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And was there any other individual to whom a DNA result came back?
Yes. There were additional reports that were issued as well within a very short time period. But we also were informed that there was DNA matching Christopher Melton as well from different parts of the sexual assault kit.
And so I think you already testified this would have been April 30th of 2024. Is that correct?
Yes, when the first match report came out.
What investigative steps did yourself, Agent Howell, or other law enforcement involved in the investigation take at that point?
So after we received Mr. Faust's information, and then subsequently, a few days later, when we received Mr. Melton's information, we obviously knew who Mr. Melton was and started to conduct some interviews. We went and re-interviewed Miss Hall, or Miss Peavy, Ashley Peavy, Tara's roommate. Went and re-interviewed Miss Lowe, or Dr. Lowe, Valerie, and started to just kind of go over everything that we had, read in previous interviews through the case file. We looked at the case file again as far as Mr. Faust was concerned to see if his name had ever come up or if there was any reference to anything like that, and we did not see anything relating to him in the case file. So we started to try and kind of familiarize ourselves with Mr. Faust and who he was. We conducted, like I said, some additional interviews, and essentially kind of went on from there.
Okay. Did you ever re-interview Mr. Chris Melton?
We did. We interviewed him on a Sunday morning, I believe it was May 5th.
Okay. In your review of the case file, did you find any information connecting Mr. Faust to Miss Tara Baker?
The only information, no, we could not find any connection between Miss Baker and Mr. Faust, except that Mr. Faust lived 585 feet from Miss Baker's residence.
Okay. And what address is that you had that was 585 feet from Miss Baker's residence?
350 Cooper Road, Athens, Georgia.
Based on what you did up to that point, did y'all make a decision on whether or not to arrest Mr. Faust?
We did.
Okay. And when is it that the arrest was executed?
May 9th, 2024, so about 10 days after we received that report.
Okay. Following your arrest of Mr. Faust, did y'all continue your investigation of this case?
We did.
Okay. I want to talk to you a little bit about your understanding of the DNA evidence back on April 30th of 2024 and in those subsequent couple of weeks. At that point, what was your understanding of the DNA evidence?
Your Honor, based on the court's prior ruling, that would constitute hearsay, so we have a hearsay objection.
All right, Mr. Yellman-Chili, any response to the hearsay objection?
Your Honor, I think asking her understanding of it is not hearsay.
Go ahead, sir.
We had a hearing outside the presence of the jury in regards to the exact same thing. Potentially so that our question is hearsay, that question is hearsay.
I'm not quite understanding your objection, so I'm going to ask either both. Why don't you both come to the bench for now? If we have to send the jury out, we will, but let's start at the bench.
Agent Biggin, I'm going to ask my question in a different way, ma'am. When you reviewed the physical evidence in this case, did you identify any swabbings that were labeled any kind of way on the exterior of the envelopes?
Yes.
Okay. In your review of the autopsy and your review of those envelopes, what were the labelings on the envelopes that you reviewed in the physical evidence as related to the swabbings from the sexual assault kit done at the autopsy?
Right. So our understanding was that there were 2 packets of swabs that were labeled oral swabs and 1 that was labeled rectal.
Okay. Did that seem to, I'm trying to find the right word for this, make sense when taken in conjunction with the autopsy?
No.
Okay. What about it didn't make sense?
Well, the fact that they took, or that 2 packs of oral swabs were taken, 1 of rectal, but no vaginal swabs were taken, seemed kind of odd. And we knew from reviewing prior crime lab reports that we had vaginal smears that were made back in, I believe, 2001. So obviously, if a vaginal smear was made, a vaginal swab had to have been taken. So our understanding at that point, and from what we learned from the crime lab as well, was that there was something was amiss as far as what got labeled incorrectly.
Is this something that you discussed with the GBI crime lab?
Yes, we did.
After discussing it with the GBI crime lab, did you make a decision about any other labs or testing that should be pursued in this case?
Yes, after consulting with the crime lab, we learned about Pure Gold Forensics and that they were a company that could help us to potentially differentiate between the swabs
And
scientifically.
When you say differentiate between the swabs scientifically, which swabs in particular are you making reference to?
2I and 2J, or 2I is oral swabs B, or swabbings B, I think it says, and then 2J is swabbings A.
Okay, so the 2 things are both labeled oral swabs?
Yes.
Okay. And what steps did you take to facilitate Pure Gold's review of those 2 pieces of physical evidence?
So we had a video conference with, I believe he's the owner or CEO of Pure Gold. I'm not really sure of his title, and explained a bit about the case and what we had going on and what we were looking for, and asked if that was a possibility, if that's something their lab could do. Obviously, we received a quote for how much that was going to cost, and I ended up sending off the cuttings of swabs that were provided to me by our crime lab to Pure Gold for testing.
And now, just to put some dates on these things, when is it that y'all sought help from Pure Gold in order to make a determination about what was actually in each of the oral swabbing labeled envelopes?
I honestly don't remember when we had that video conference. I don't remember.
Do you remember when you received the results from Pure Gold?
I would have to look at the report to see, or my report to see. I don't remember.
Okay.
I want to say it was maybe fall of 24.
Okay.
I'd
Well,
have to look.
do you think that reviewing that portion of your report would help refresh your recollection?
Absolutely.
And, Your Honor, I apologize. It's going to take me a second to find that particular one. Judge, my computer's frozen, so it may take a few more seconds. Judge, I'm going to show Mr. Cruz a report dated from September 5th of 2024. By Agent Bigham, sorry. Agent Bigham, I'm going to hand you a laptop that has a copy of your report from Thursday, September 5th of 2024. I'd like you to review it, don't read from it, and let me know when you've had a chance to review it.
Okay.
Having had an opportunity to review that report, has it refreshed your recollection?
Yes.
All right. If you would, please let me know when it is that y'all sent the information to Pure Gold.
September 5th of 2024 is when I would have mailed it to Pure Gold.
Okay. Now, I want to go backwards a little bit and go back to May. Did you re-interview Mr. Chris Melton in May of 2024?
Yes, Agent Howell and I did.
Do you recall what date you re-interviewed him?
I believe it was on Sunday, May 5th. I believe that was the 5th.
Okay.
No, it was a Sunday morning for sure.
And just so we have our timeline, when was it again that Mr. Faust was arrested?
May 9th.
Okay. So going back to May 5th of 2024, that's obviously before the September date we just talked about. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So when you went to go meet with Mr. Melton and interview him, where did you believe his DNA had been recovered from?
At that point, we believed that it had been recovered from oral swabs, which would have been taken from Ms. Baker's mouth during autopsy.
All right. And I was not precise in some of my questioning. I've been saying, when did you re-interview him? Had y'all ever interviewed, and when I say y'all, I mean you, Agent Bigham, and Agent Howell, had the two of you ever interviewed Mr. Melton?
No.
Okay.
Had not.
Were you familiar with your review of the previous investigation in the case file, whether or not he had been interviewed before?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have an opportunity to review those interviews?
I did. I reviewed the audio recordings as well as the summaries that were written.
All right. And in your review of that, as well as your review of the case file, did you develop any kind of opinion about the way in which Mr. Melton perceived his interaction with law enforcement from the time period of the original investigation in 2001 and kind of continuing forward?
I guess my perception was that, I mean, obviously he was kind of the first suspect, the first person they looked at, and they continually looked at him for years. Interviewed, I believe, 4 times over the years by different people, different agents, different officers. And our perception was that, you know, he was the one that they were kind of continuing to go back to and ensure that they were getting statements from him and, you know, verifying his alibi and things like that.
Given that he had already talked to law enforcement several times, well, let me back up a little bit and lay a little groundwork. As an investigator who interviews suspects, are there certain interview techniques that you use?
Yes, I think it depends on the type of case, the type of person you're talking to, and kind of what you're trying to glean from the interview.
Okay. Was there any kind of technique or approach, even, technique might be a bad word, that you were intending to use or used with Mr. Melton on that May 5th interview?
As far as that's concerned, I generally do interviews pretty much the same way all the time. They're very relaxed. Very casual. It's more like a conversation. I don't get fired up. I'm not a yeller that I can think of in any interview I've been in the past 18, 19 years. So I generally approach interviews like that. I kind of have this rule of thumb that I'm not ugly to anyone unless they give me a reason to be ugly. So with him, it was just very relaxed. I mean, obviously we wanted to talk to him. We wanted to kind of rehash his story and go through everything again. But other than that, I mean, there was no reason to confront him or no reason to be ugly towards him.
And, this might be a hard question, but if you know approximately how many of the original witnesses were re-interviewed as part of y'all's investigation?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I don't know how many were re-interviewed. I would say maybe 20 or 30 off the top of my head.
Okay.
We did well into 100 interviews, I would say, but as far as re-interviews, maybe 20 or 30. I'd have to go look for an exact number.
And I don't want you to get into any of the contents of the interview at this point, but after you arrested Mr. Faust on May 9th of 2024, did you and Agent Howell interview him?
We did.
Okay. And did Mr. Faust provide y'all with a statement at that time?
He did.
Okay. Agent Bigham, I'm going to show Mr. Cruz State's Exhibit 158. After that, I'll bring it up to you. What's that? Mark State's Exhibit 158. Do you recognize that?
I do.
Okay. And let me ask you this. How do you recognize it?
So it's got a GBI evidence property tag number on it. It's got our evidence label on it. And I recognize the crime lab number that's on it as being this case's crime lab number.
All right. And do you know what is contained in that envelope or baggie?
I do.
Okay. And what is it?
It's, I'm assuming in a box, yes, buccal swabs that were taken from the mouth of Mr. Faust.
Okay. And so when you say Mr. Faust, were you present when those samples were collected?
I was. It was Agent Howell and myself.
All right. Did you collect them or did Agent Howell collect them?
No, Agent Howell did.
Okay. But you were present when it was collected, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And were you present when it was placed in that evidence bag?
I remember him boxing them up. I don't recall if he put them in a bag where we were right then.
Okay.
But boxing them up, they go inside of like a white cardboard box.
All right. And when you say Mr. Faust, do you mind pointing to the individual who you saw those buccal swabs taken from and describing an article of clothing that that person is wearing if they are present in the courtroom today?
Sure. So he is sitting over at the table over there by the door, and he's wearing an Argyle sweater that's light blue, teal, and gray.
And, Your Honor, I'd ask the record reflect that Agent Bigham has identified Mr. Faust.
It so reflects.
All right. And I'm not going to tender this exhibit through Agent Bigham. Your Honor, we'll connect up the rest of it with Agent Howell. If I could have just a moment, Judge.
Okay.
Your Honor, I don't have any other questions for Agent Bigham at this time.
All right. Mr. Cruz, cross-examination.